We're live on YouTube now, Chair.
Thank you, Ed, and good evening, everybody. Welcome to this Cabinet meeting of the 16th of December. We have a huge agenda this evening. We'll endeavour to get it through quickly, but this reflects the accomplishment of a significant number of long-term projects that have been worked on for quite some time. So it's fantastic to see them come to fruition. We'll start with our agenda items, and we have apologies. I believe we have apologies from Councillor Anna King. Any further apologies that you're aware of, Catherine or Ed?
None received, no.
Okay, that's great. Okay. Minutes. I'm not sure if my pack included any minutes. Do we have minutes for a previous meeting?
We do, Chair. They were emailed out to members.
Beg your pardon, I probably did look at those. Has everybody had a chance to digest the minutes of the previous meeting? Does anyone want to make any comments, amendments, corrections at all? Or are we happy with the reflection? I know I checked them over at the time. So I'm happy.
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you for the proposition. Phil, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That's the minutes. Now, we do have intention to hold part of this meeting, this evening's meeting, in private. And the reason for this is down to the confidential and commercial nature of some of the information, most specifically around a number of housing schemes. We only do that if we absolutely have to. And on this occasion, it's quite clear that on all four of these reports, we do need to. But as what we will be doing is we will be returning to the final decisions so that those decisions can be discussed fully and decisions made in public. So there'll be a short break to this evening's meeting while we go into the private session, and we will then very quickly as we can return to a public meeting, and that relates to confidential information around items 17, 18, 19 and 20 on this evening's public agenda. Just to check, but I'm not aware of any public deputations or public addresses. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you very much. Can I ask if any member of the Cabinet has any declaration of interest to make on any item appearing on this evening's agenda?
No.
No, thank you very much indeed. This evening we do have a couple of issues arising from overview and scrutiny committees. Both will be presented by Councillor Lane. Our routine has become on reports that we hear the report, brief questions from Cabinet and then speakers, and as we highlighted a moment ago, we have Councillor Roberts to speak on item 6A from Overview and Scrutiny, and Councillors Walker and Birch on 6B. So Councillor Lane, Jamie, welcome, over to you. First one is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee Food Poverty recommendations. Welcome.
Thank you, good evening. I'm pleased to present this report to you. When Overview and Scrutiny started their work programme back in March 2019, no one could have foreseen the events that were to come. Not only has this delayed the report coming to you by 6 months, it has caused greater food poverty across the borough. I would like to thank Councillor Dennis Meredith, who chaired this task and finish group, as well as the councillors that took part in it. I'd also like to thank our co-optees, Paul Foster and Clive Erston, who helped bring the report together. I'd like to thank everybody who gave evidence, either in person or written. I'd like to thank Tracy Tiff for putting everything together to create this report. The scope of the task and finish group was to examine the extent to which individuals and families are experiencing food poverty, the range of contributing factors and the changes that have been made where the council partners support residents and during their hardship, and to review the impacts and the concentration of food poverty across the borough of Northampton. The report highlights the need for different agencies and organisations to work together better and to have better communication and better education. Both Scrutiny have made 16 recommendations to you tonight. Some are very quick, very simple and very cheap to implement. With the Unitary Council on the horizon, I would ask Cabinet to consider this report as a matter of urgency and update Overview and Scrutiny at its January meeting and its progress. I'm pleased to present the report to Cabinet.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jamie. Anybody want to briefly make any comment there? I'll make a quick comment, and we thank you for another excellent piece of work as always. We have an outstanding item, and I suspect Councillor Roberts will mention this, an outstanding from our motion meeting, which things have changed on the school meals front quite a bit. We've been lobbying in the background on that too, but also keen to meet with the county. And despite aspirations, we haven't met with Matt Colby. So I've spoken with Councillor Fiona Baker, who's agreed to meet with us. That will be the follow-up perhaps to that motion. If there's no further comments, we'll bring in Councillor Roberts to add her comments on this report. Emma, welcome.
Thank you, Councillor Nunn. Thank you, everybody, for letting me speak. I wanted to talk on the report. As a group of people, we spent a huge amount of time putting this report together and the recommendations, and I'd like to echo Jamie's thanks to everybody that was involved. The contributors were exceptional and invaluable to us in making the recommendations. The recommendations are really well thought out, and the recommendations are urgently required on a number of instances. I'm pleased that Councillor Nunn has mentioned the motion that obviously runs directly alongside this report now. And unfortunately, we haven't made any progress with that motion. I have sent a number of emails to Councillor Nunn and to Councillor Golby in respect of the steps that are needed on that motion and moving forward. And I really wanted to speak tonight because I haven't had a response to those emails and I don't know what the steps are. And I'm really conscious that this report may well be passed, but then action will not be taken and we will move into unitary without those items being dealt with. Councillor Nunn talked about there being progress with regards to the free school meals. There has been announcements with regards to the financial funding, but there has been no announcements with regards to the actual action and activity that needs to take place. And although there was funding provided eventually in October, that funding didn't get to people as quickly as it needed to. And some people still in November and December were still waiting on vouchers that they'd applied for the October half term. Families were provided with single vouchers when there was 3 children within the family. And that rollout, or the problems with that rollout, in my opinion, stemmed directly from the time that they had to deal with it and that the officers had to try and get schools on board a day before or after half term had already commenced. And we can't be in that same position for the Christmas break. And we certainly can't leave ourselves, or we aren't leaving ourselves with very much time. I really sincerely hope that plans are already afoot and in play and that I just haven't been told about them or received a response. But we've got to see that action happen. And that has to happen directly alongside this report and the recommendations that are within it. So I would really urge, I hope the recommendations will be accepted, but that not only do we accept those recommendations, that we act upon them urgently and get those that want to be involved and want to help to try and process these recommendations through involved as quickly as possible. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Emma. Any further comments at all on this? We're equally grateful. I think tonight's agenda reflects the fact that we are pushing to get key things done. And this sits on a list. I know myself, in common with the other exec now on the unitary, spend a significant amount of time this week will reflect for me personally 20 hours of commitments to do with unitary on top of COVID, on top of pushing, as we have done tonight, 20 odd items into cabinet. There are so many priorities we're keen to do, but so please take that as no lack of desire to want to move this forward, Emma. And in terms of the actual activities, my understanding is that the vouchers are supposedly all out there for Christmas. That decision was taken somewhere soon after we'd done our motion, but that also there are a range of other activities that they didn't get in place for Christmas, but will be for Easter. But I'll organise that meeting with Councillor Baker, and she'll be able to tell us more, and then that will tie in nicely with the recommendations of this report. James, you want to make a comment?
Just very quickly on the school meal vouchers for Christmas. I'm a school governor at my kids' school, and I can confirm they have gone out. I know that parents received them earlier this week. So I believe that it's an all online system, similar to last time, but I think it's a lot better organised from what I hear this time. So that's good news, and hopefully every child who's entitled to those will get those for Christmas.
James, thanks for your comments. Anybody else, any further comments on this? In which case, with your agreement, we'll once again thank the Ovarian Scrutiny Committee for their work, and as always, we'll go over the report and look at the actions and see what we can do to progress it. That takes us on to our next report, which is the recommendations of the Ovarian Scrutiny Committee. This is on gangs and knife crime. So with, again, Councillor Lane to introduce, then Councillor Walker and Councillor Birch, I think, are going to speak on it. Jamie, back to you.
Thank you. Just on the other report quickly, the child food poverty was just one element of the report. So don't think that was the whole of the report. It wasn't. There's a lot more in there than the free school meals. So I wouldn't lose sight of the other things when looking at one thing. With this one, thank you very much. I'm very pleased to present this report to you. I'd like to thank Councillor Walker, who chaired this task finish group, and he's going to talk more about it in a moment. The scope of this task finish group was to investigate how Northampton Borough Council can play an active role in tackling knife crime and gangs in Hampton. So I'd like to thank him. I'd like to thank the committee that met to work on this report, and of course Tracy Tiff for putting the report together. We have 12 recommendations for you this evening, and like before, it's much around joined up working, education, and providing youth provision for the youth of Northampton, and really educating and making sure that knife crime doesn't happen in Northampton again. So I'm pleased to present the report to you. I'll allow Councillor Walker to talk more on it. But again, time is running out, so I'd really like to see an update on these recommendations at our January Ovarian Scrutiny Committee meeting, please. Thank you. Please present the report.
Thank you very much, Jamie. And noted, by the way, your point about the breadth of the poverty report. Noted, it wasn't just child poverty, was it? No, thank you very much indeed. And we want to jump in there with a comment, or shall we move straight to Councillor Walker, who chaired the group? Perhaps we'll ask him to add his comments first, shall we? And then come back for our comments. Graham, welcome. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I was very delighted to chair this high-profile scrutiny activity, which took place in the form of a working group rather than a scrutiny panel. Evidence received was really comprehensive, and I do thank all of those who gave up their time to attend the meeting of the working group to provide information and to answer one of the core questions of the working group. The working group acknowledges that there is a need for a complex situation to this problem. The working group further acknowledged that there is a need for community empowerment, and the police can assist regarding bidding for funding. There is a lot of good work going on in the respect of gangs and knife crime, and the working group emphasised that all relevant organisations and agencies should work together so they can collaborate and enhance joint bids for funding in respect of dealing with this group. The site visit to a local boxing club informed the evidence base, and the working group saw firsthand the enjoyment on the young people's faces whilst at the club. There was a feeling of calm in the building and discipline was followed. I urge the Cabinet to consider accepting all of the recommendations of this scrutiny report as detailed in section 2. I would also actually like to thank the working group and all the organisations and the excellent work that was carried out by Tracy Tiff putting this together, and also Vicky Rockall had a great lot to do with this. So yeah, that's virtually all I have to say. So let's hope we can start and find some of these children, some youth clubs in and around our communities. We seriously need this, these places to open on behalf of our youth. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Graham. Don't see any hands for comments, so we'll go to our next speaker, which is Councillor Birch. Jane, over to you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nunn. I endorse what Councillor Walker has said here, and I think one of the main things that came out of the work that we did on this group was that there are many, many organisations within the town that are doing very similar work, and we need to work collaboratively. We need to have these organisations joining up, helping each other out, signposting from one to the other when there is an offer that another organisation can make that is going to enhance the lives of these young people. Sporting activities are incredibly useful, incredibly important in developing team spirit, sense of working with people, playing to the rules. That's one of the things that sport does for you, isn't it? And the facilities for these young people need to be maintained and developed and extended. As a result of this and some of the very sad incidents that we've had in the town recently, there was a safeguarding summit based around the situation that we have in St David's, which was sadly a young boy involved with knives, and he sadly died. The safeguarding summit involved police, children's services, a whole range of professionals working with young people. And I think the fact that a lot of them had attended the working group as expert witnesses, they were very much aware of the work that had been going on in the borough. And they came together, and one of the things all of them were saying about safeguarding was, we need to work together. We cannot work in silos. The professionals need to work together. The voluntary sector needs to work together. Young people are slipping through these various organisations when there isn't this communication. The other thing that I'd just like to add, all the work that's done in our Ovarian Scrutiny work and the working groups and the committees is incredibly useful for future reference. And I would hate to see that this work isn't in some way passed to the unitary. The sovereign councils at the moment are producing some excellent Ovarian Scrutiny work, and this work just does need to be transported to the unitaries. And it is a body of work, a body of research, evidence-based, that will form will form future policy maybe. So my plea really is that this does have a legacy, and that it does go forward to work to provide the evidence and the logic, the research for future projects. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jane. Yeah, thank you very much indeed. I think there's two aspects to what you're saying there, and I'd agree with both. One is the sort of tradition of great overview and scrutiny which the borough has, which does seem to be translating certainly into the Shadow Authority. I attended your scrutiny meeting, you chair the West Shadow Scrutiny course, and they can see all of those sort of habits and that approach, so that's great news. But often when I think about the important things that we do in Northampton that may be a little different to the other areas, and all of the new areas coming together have their own challenges, it's often things like the knife crime initiatives that occur to me as being vital parts of the work that goes on within the Borough Council, absolutely vital. And as one of the early points in the report says, it's absolutely essential that work continues. And you as a committee, through the committee that Graham has chaired, have brought some excellent further comments to enhance that work. So I think it's absolutely crucial that we do everything we can to make sure that the work on this area is ramped up to that level, along with many of the other community safety initiatives. I'll pause there and see if any of the cabinet have any comments they wish to make on that report, knife crime.
Very good.
Yeah.
Councillor Lane is indicating he'd like to speak, Chair.
Beg your pardon, Jamie.
Yeah, through you, Leader. It's just a point that Councillor Birch raised about overview and scrutiny and going forward. All our reports, all our overview and scrutiny reports, there's a library on the overview and scrutiny toolkit on the internet. And these go back to about 2006. And there's over 70 reports there. And I think we had, well, I know we had a briefing last night from the West Northants shadow authority about how our website is going to operate in the future. And from what I could make out yesterday with my limited technical skills, is that they will remain there for a period of time. But I know Tracy, Tiff and I did a piece of work a couple of years ago on how effective overview scrutiny has been at the Borough Council, and the impact it's had on the lives of people in Northampton, and it's been very, very. So I would urge people to look at those reports, and in some way, if we can keep them for longer than I think the 2 years was mentioned last night, it would be very, very helpful. But certainly, as long as I'm a councillor, none of those reports will just lie and gather dust.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. Yeah, it's I mean, there's a valuable archive there. Whilst circumstances change, many of the reports will remain valid for a significant period of time. It would be nice to find a way of a more permanent archive than 2 years being created, wouldn't it? Perhaps we need to pursue that as we eventually transition across to just in some years' time the West website. Anybody else any further comments on Ovarian Scrutiny generally or on these particular reports? No? Okay, in which case then, again, thank Councillor Walker for chairing that committee and Councillor Lane for presenting the report, along with Councillor Birch for her comments. And we're extremely grateful for all the work you do, and we'll endeavour to act on any way we can on the recommendations that you're making. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Takes us on then to item. Thank you. Takes us on then to item 7, which is the corporate performance report for Q2, which is with Phil. Councillor Larratt. Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. This is the corporate performance report for Q2 from the 1st of July to the 30th of September. Obviously, during the current situation with the ongoing pandemic, performance has continued to be affected. And I think it's fair to say that staff have risen to the challenges and presented by COVID and everything else, new ways of working from home, etc., etc. But that said, I think staff are to be praised for the performance that has been maintained throughout the period. Of course, there's been some drop, but overall, I think it's fair to say that performance has remained good. So, you know, I'd like to thank all our staff for maintaining the level of performance that they've managed to achieve during the period in question. Yes, figures are down, but as you can see from the indicators, while blues are down, greens are up, and ambers are up and reds are down a little bit. So all in all, I think it's fair to say that there has been a sustained performance throughout the period, for which we should be really grateful. There are the highlights reports listed, highlights listed on page 23, where we've done really well, and I think the fact that we've managed to correct missed bins so well within 48 hours, a credit to our contractor, and all similarly, the fly tippings removed within 2 working days. Again, I think that's really good that we're achieving that level. Whether that's due to fewer fly tips, I don't know, but at the end of the day, it's a good performance that we should be pleased with. On the other side of the page, on page 24, highlighted levels where perhaps we're down a bit. Missed bins during the period has unfortunately is not very good, but then again we've had refuse crews chopping and changing around due to COVID and people being off sick, and I'm sure we haven't had regular people on regular routes, and consequently the odd more bin gets missed, I'm afraid. So but overall it is down, it is in the red, but only to be expected in the current circumstances. And of course town centre footfall is well down, and let's just hope that with vaccinations and everything else that picks up in the coming year. So that's the highlights, Chairman. Congratulations to everybody in maintaining a good level of performance across the council. In the appendix, you have the all the details of the individual performance indicators, and I'm happy to answer any questions and move the recommendation that we note the report.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you very much indeed. You're absolutely right. Everybody needs to be congratulated for how performance has been maintained. You spent a little time there talking about refuse collections. Of course, we've had issues with potentially with drivers, and if there's an infection amongst the team, you have to be extremely careful, because it'd be very easy to pass the infection out through the community by touching everybody's bin or somebody who has potentially been in contact with the virus. So that's almost inevitable, isn't it? I don't know if anybody wants to make any further comments at that point, or whether we go to our next, our one speaker on this item, which is Councillor Stone. Any urgent comments at all? No, in which case we'll go to you, Danielle. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I too wanted to talk about the staff. I think it's really admirable the way they've stepped up in the situation that we've found ourselves in, not just working from home, but working under huge pressure. And doing a really valiant job. I think it's really admirable. I do worry, though, about staff capacity and what we can do to ease the stress that the staff are under, because not only are they dealing with a pandemic, we're dealing with Brexit, and now we're right in the middle of reorganisation and all that means for the staff. So I am particularly worried about staff at the minute. I think the report reflects really well on them. There are just a couple of things that I wanted to pick up on. When we're reporting on fly tipping, I always feel as if it's not really talking about Castle, where I'm the borough councillor, because Castle is the town centre and it has its particular issues. And one of the things I would like the borough to consider is what needs to happen when there are new developments. So recently I had to call on Councillor Hallam to help me get one of my areas cleared up, and he did, and I'm very grateful for that. But it was truly disgusting. And I had to call on him because the fly tipping wasn't picked up in a timely way. And I must have reported it at least 4 times and was given the wrong information about when it was going to get cleared. But it was in a new development. It's in a new development, new housing, new families moving in. I just think we need to have regard to how we want people to begin their family life in new developments. We need to set the standard really high to encourage people to maintain those standards. I felt really sorry for those new families moving into that area. And it was Great Russell Street, if anybody wants to know. So that was one thing I wanted to comment on. The other one is I'm really pleased to see the spending listed under 3.61, parks and open spaces, but there's no information about what and where they are. So I'd quite like that. I'm delighted to see the allocation of funding for the renovation of the gates at the Billing Road Cemetery. And I just wanted to note for you that the intelligence about that, the need for that, was brought by local people to the borough, and I'm very pleased that the borough agreed to meet local residents and hear the presentations from them about what they wanted to see happen.
Excuse me, Chairman. Sorry, Chairman, but we seem to have jumped onto another report.
I wondered, are we straying into item 8?
Oh, sorry, am I talking to? You're right. You're quite right. You're quite right.
Sorry, Danielle.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
My notes are a bit scruffy. What I wanted to raise under item 7 was about the enterprise zone. I've raised it before and I want to raise it again because I think all our expectations of the enterprise zone have been let down, probably for very understandable reasons. I think we need to moderate our expectations to meet new circumstances. And what I've asked for before is an economic development strategy for that area and for the town centre. We're in really difficult economic times. We're facing a huge recession. We need to be realistic about what jobs are going to come in. When we are told about what jobs have been created, we also need to know which ones have failed. So over time, I would like to see that on a graph. So visual representation of that would help me hugely. The other thing I wanted to raise under that item was car parking at the station. Could we please have a timeline? Because, you know, having lived with an expectation we're going to get this resolved for a number of years, it would be nice to have an end point, wouldn't it? A finishing line, so to speak.
So just quickly chip in on some of those with the station parking. It has been a sort of an on and off situation, but it is very much pressing ahead. But we can perhaps get an update out to folk. But with all the partners now satisfactory around the table, we do seem to be making progress, which hasn't always been the case following the change of franchisee. And with the enterprise zones are there not for easy places to develop jobs, but possibly sometimes because they're hard places and easy sites are gone. So there's a significant amount of work going on now to bring forward some of these sites and make them more market ready. But I think your key point there, which is correct, of course, we have to continually review what the ongoing needs are post-COVID. And I know we're very much doing that. Mike, did you want to comment on anything on fly tipping? Perhaps that particular example has some lessons we can learn, or there was a comment about parks and open spaces.
Yeah, I think it's really easy actually to forget when it comes to a number of challenges, for example, around food waste collections, and those obviously feed through to the missed bin stats. I think it's actually really easy to forget that we're in a pandemic at the moment, and a number of staff have been quite rightly self-isolating. And when you actually explain that to people, they're like, "Oh, I didn't realise that was the case. That's actually really good. We're glad that you're self-isolating and you've got your staff self-isolating, and we're glad that you're structuring that so it's a minimal disruption to service." Obviously, that plays through in some of the stats, but just think of the alternative if we weren't having that disruption and somebody was known to be sick and was on a bin round touching thousands of bins every day. People would rightly be up in arms. So actually, I'm actually proud that some of the stats have got better, some of them haven't got better, but the reason behind that was actually a really good, valid one, and we've actually had a lot less disruption to our service than other councils' stats will probably show. So that'd be my general comment is to remember the times that we're in, and actually, well, some is better, some is worse, but actually it's not been as bad as it's been elsewhere, and there's been a really valid reason for that, protecting our staff.
Okay,
thank you, Mike.
Can I just say we'll look at how we can improve the narrative on perhaps the EZ and on the station car park. I hear what Danielle says about the fly tipping in a new area. I mean, perhaps that's something that we need to look at from a contractual basis, because these areas suddenly come into being. There's issues with adoptions and when you go down a road and when you don't. Perhaps we need to make sure that they get onto the records very, very quickly as soon as the first person moves in, that we start visiting, whether it's for street cleaning, whether it's for collecting bins or whatever, and that they are on the database, and that if a fly tip's reported, then it is picked up. So I think perhaps we just need to make sure that process is there, and I'm happy to take that up as well, Chair. But I'd like to thank Councillor Stone for her comments and support. I think we're all concerned about morale at the moment and stress. It is a difficult situation as we move to unitary in the next 4 months, and hopefully we'll be able to progress the recruitment and changes that are coming on in order to relieve that. But we do have, as you say, capacity issues, because obviously some staff are looking to move elsewhere, and we are losing a lot of good people who are doing a job that we rely on. But it's just a very, very difficult situation, and we'll manage it as best we possibly can. Other than that, Chair, I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Phil. The recommendations are at section 2, of course, to which, as well as that, I'd ask for your agreement also that we once again formally recognise and record our thanks to all staff for the outstanding way in which performance across areas has remained throughout what have been the most incredibly difficult circumstances. So if I could just ask you to confirm your agreement to both of those points, please.
Agreed.
Is it agreed?
Agreed.
That's tremendous. Thank you very much indeed. It takes us on to item 8, which Brandon will introduce, following which we've one speaker again is Councillor Stone. Item 8 is finance monitoring to the 30th of November. Brandon, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This report, thank you, Chair. Okay, this report provides the Cabinet with a budget monitoring information up to the end of November 2020. For this is period 8. The budget forecast variance for 2021 now stands at a marginal underspend, as you can see on the report on page 37 on item 3.3. So we're in a good position at the moment. So we're quite, only a few months ago we were looking at over £1 million overspend. With all the grants that have been starting to come in from the government, we've started to look at an underspend now, which is good news. And obviously things are looking a lot more healthier for the council. The report details the areas we are suffering cost pressures or lost income as a result of COVID activities. That is provided in details of them are in the appendix provided at the back of the report. And on top of that as well, in the current grants that we've distributed out to businesses, at the moment we've helped out another 603 businesses with the grants. So a total of just under £1 million has been distributed out to current business. And I would urge other businesses to start applying, because we have got money there available to help businesses out there. We're just not having the uptake this time, which is surprising. So, if everybody can get that message out to local businesses that that are qualifying under the current scheme, then get them to apply, because, there's money there to help them out, especially over the Christmas period. And obviously, with the way things are in Northampton at the moment and the country, we don't know how things are going to be over the next few weeks. So we need to try and help as much as we can. In addition to the normal budget updates, the report contains 2 additional recommendations. One's to ask Cabinet to approve a deferral of repayment of the loan by the University of Northampton by 1 year to allow planned site disposals to be made. They have suffered delays this year, obviously due to COVID, and this is a minimal risk to us, as the Treasury has provided assurances that they will extend their guarantee for a further additional year. The second is to provide grants of support for each of our community centres of £1,000. Again, they've had to close a lot of the time now, and we've got money within the grants that we've been given from the government, so I think it's right that we should support our local community centres. Again, they've been losing out on revenue incomes, and have also given a lot of support to our communities as well over the period of times by distributing food and helping others out as well. So to help them out, that would be another cost to the borough for another 22,000, which is small money compared to what they've probably lost in total. But if it's a little bit that we can help with, I think it should be something that we do for our community centres. I'm open to any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Brandon. A couple of extra suggestions there, which I think are absolutely excellent. Quite right too. I don't see that anybody has any urgent comments, so we'll move to our one speaker on this item, shall we? Councillor Stone. Danielle, over to you.
Thank you, and I apologise for skipping ahead before. So I wanted to say thank you for that proposal about the community grants. I think it's really timely, obviously, and will be very, very helpful. So thank you for that. And can I just say that our community centres and community hubs are crucial now. They've been absolutely crucial through the pandemic, but they're going to be really, really crucial going forward into the new unitary, because I cannot for the life of me see how the statutory body is going to be able to deliver without using some of our community centres as delivery venues and vehicles. So I think it's really important to make sure that they remain strong and they survive the pandemic. So thank you for that. I do want to reiterate the point I was beginning to make before, which was about where local people with local intelligence and local expertise meet with borough officers. What can come out of those meetings, I think, is really significant. So I'd like to thank the officers who met with me and residents around the Billing Road Cemetery, and I would like to thank the officers for the work that's been done on maintenance and is going to be done on repairing what is a very historic gateway there. One of the questions I wanted to ask at 3.63 was around the development pool and whether all the proposed projects are going to be honoured in the new unitary. And then just a comment really on the rearrangement of the university loan. I do think it's important that the public realise the significant difference between this loan and the loan at Sixfields. We had a really bad reputation around all of that. A lot of work has been done to repair that reputation. This is a significantly different order of loan because it's been underwritten, but also the university's got huge assets. And what's significant for me is that, you know, there will always be unforeseen risks and events. It's about how we handle it. And it seems to be me that this has been handled really well. And, you know, there is a risk, but there's been a flexible approach to it, due diligence around it. And I would like to commend the officers for all of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Danielle. And I'd agree with that. It's been a very carefully approached thing, but it is the right thing to do, for sure. Does anybody want to make any comments based on any of the observations that Councillor Stone has made?
No, if I can, Chair, just to come back on them. With regard to the university, like Councillor Stone's correct, you know, they're a massive asset to our town and they're crucial to our local economy. So whatever we can do to help them, we should. And, you know, what they bring to the town is a massive asset for us. So we need to do as much as we can to help them. And as we've got the Treasury providing, you know, the security there for us and assurances that if things do get a bit tougher for them, then the Treasury will step in and help out. So we've got them assurances, but again, we want to try and do as much as we can with them and our community centres and any future development that's going forward as well, which Councillor Stone has just noted on with future projects that we've got on planned. We are making sure that everything that we've got listed is going forward to the new unitary council to be proposed and make sure it goes ahead. I haven't heard anything in the grapevine about anything not going ahead, what we've proposed. So at the moment, things are okay. But again, we'll make sure we keep our fingers on the pulse to make sure nothing slips through. But yeah, I mean, again, with regard to helping the community out, if things get, you know, restrictions go higher than what they are now in the future, in the next few months before the actual rollout of the full rollout of the new vaccine, then we'll look again at how we can help the community out in the future over the next few 4 or 5 months to make sure they get through the difficult periods again. Like I said, we've got a small surplus at the moment, so we're in a good position. So I'm quite happy to sit back and have a look and see what we can to help a little bit further if and when it's needed. And on that, Chair, I'll put the recommendations forward for 2.1 to 2.4.
Thank you, Brandon. Yeah, and actually, just to add to that comment, we were pleased that the strategy is that district boroughs budgets will just morph into the unitary budget. But then our next concern was, well, what else would we be doing if we were setting our own borough budget for next year? And that, of course, includes bids for sort of capital for various different projects. So we have undertaken a very similar exercise to what we would normally do, asking our directors and senior managers to put forward proposals for the projects they would otherwise be bidding for if we were creating our own budget. That exercise has been done very carefully, and the content of that exercise has been forwarded over to the Section 151 officer of the Shadow Council in order that they are aware of the important projects, some of which are pretty crucial projects which are going to bring innovation into the various areas of our work. And we have flagged them as priorities that we were looking for support for that kind of activity that we might otherwise have been instigating ourselves if we were still in control of our own budgets for next year. Brandon's concluded his report. He's drawn our attention to the recommendations at section 2. So once again, just asking you to confirm your agreement to those recommendations, please.
Agreed.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Takes us on to item 9, which is asset management disposals. And that's with Tim. There's no speakers, Tim, and over to you.
Thank you, Leader. This is a very varied collection of disposals from our asset management portfolio, each with individual considerations and individual requirements. The first of them is Albion House, which the council has owned for many years, a 1960s office building, part occupied. We now have the marvellous opportunity of selling to a charitable trust, which will in turn enable the collection of the Leather Museum, the Conservation Centre, livery companies, and all the national leather highlights to come together in one place and secure them a permanent home for the future, which is very exciting for the town and for the country because it has a national reputation. And so that is a straightforward sale to the Charitable Trust with a Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors Red Book valuation to carry it along. The second is substation land to go with the development of the Vulcan Works, and that's a simple transfer to Western Power in order to make sure that the electricity supply is there and is to be dealt with satisfactorily. The third is the land at Lodge Way, I think they call it, that is let to Northampton Sub Aqua Club, which has now ceased to operate, and its lease has been acquired by a development company. There is a proposal to redevelop the site, and consequently, we wish to sell the freehold to that development company in order to make that happen. Once again, covered, of course, by an RICS Red Book valuation, because it's not a straightforward open market transaction. And then the final recommendation that we have is to provide £70,000 of the capital receipt money, which all these things will generate, to go towards match funding for the mountain bike centre, which is on the Hardingstone 9 site of the Delapre Golf Complex, a particularly exciting project, part funded by national bodies and part by Section 106. And this £70,000 will make sure that the council's match funding of 50% is all in place to take that project forward, which goes to the second stage of its grant application in January of next year. So terrific variety. Be happy to answer any detailed questions on any of them, but I would recommend that they all proceed as in the recommendation set out in item 2, Leader.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you very much indeed. Some exciting projects there. Anybody want to make any comments or ask any questions at all? No, I think the information's pretty straightforward. So as Tim says, we'll draw your attention back to the recommendations at section 2 and just ask you to confirm your agreement, please, to those recommendations. Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. That's great. And I think we should note the tremendous progress on assets. There's been an enormous amount of work to do there. The fairly new team that's come together, the new corporate asset managers, made tremendous progress to bring all these things forward. So extremely grateful for the work that they've done there. Thank you. Takes us on to item 10, which again is with Tim. This is 41 to 45 Abingdon Street and the asbestos removal. Again, no speakers on this item, Tim.
Right, thank you, Leader. 4145 Abingdon Street, which we know better as Marks and Spencer's. The council acquired the freehold, you will remember, and the time has now come to take that forward. The first step in that progress is to remove asbestos from the site. And this recommendation is the procedure for appointing the specialist contractor to carry out those works. The second thread of this report is the update on the Towns Fund. This was a fund which followed on from the Future High Street Fund, instigated by the government to provide grant and gap funding assistance for town regeneration projects. We were lucky enough to secure a £1 million town deal investment from that fund, which will largely fund the removal of the asbestos. The second stage of that is to produce a town investment plan, and that has gone through tremendous amount of work over recent months, and that was submitted at the end of last week to government. And we should get an indication early in the new year. I would particularly like to pay tribute to and acknowledge the tremendous amount of hard work that went into producing that in a pretty short time scale. And this very detailed document really is, I think, a great credit to Northampton, to the Forward Board and to the team that worked on it. So we've got our fingers crossed on that. And probably while I'm mentioning that, it's also just worth mentioning that we have the bid in for the Future High Streets Fund, and we're sitting right on the edge of our seats because we expect to have the result of that application hopefully before Christmas. So the recommendation is a simple one to deal with the appointment of the contractor and is set out at 2.1. Leader, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Tim. That's great. And as you say, not only have we had the money, but we've got to spend it by the end of March, haven't we? So we need to crack on. And as you also said, the town investment plan, having made that further progress, so we need to organise, and we will do, another member update on that, so that people are aware of the work we've done. And given the attention that's on it, we thought we might make that not only our own members, but open that up to all members across the West to become perhaps more greatly aware of some of the regen potential we've got within Northampton. Any further queries or comments at all on this particular item, Abingdon Street? No, in which case, as Tim has said, recommendations are section 2. Can you just signal your agreement to the recommendations, please?
Agreed.
That's great. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Tim. Takes us on to item 11, which is with James. Again, no speakers on this, James. And this is the annual infrastructure funding statement. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is regarding the infrastructure funding statements. So essentially from the 31st December 2020, the infrastructure level regulations require local planning authorities to publish monitoring reports with regards to the interest of transparency in spending of 106 money and SIL money. So I think this is a welcome report. I think we all agree that transparency is an important part of local government and government in general. Essentially, the contents of the infrastructure spending report will be divided into 3 key sections for the previous financial year. And this includes information on the community infrastructure levy, which is SIL, information on section 106 contributions, and items of infrastructure that SIL has been spent on. The IFS will also provide feedback to members, stakeholders and residents of how money has been collected through SIL and how that money has been allocated, also section 106 as well. For note, the report for 2020 to 2021 will show that money has been passed to some of the parish councils within the borough where developments have also taken place. The second part of the IFS sets out the main areas that section 106 money has been allocated to and where money has been transferred to other bodies such as NCC and the Health Authority. The IFS also sets out the active section 106 agreements that are being monitored by the council and how developer contributions received through 106 agreements have been spent and allocated in the future. In the financial year of 2019 to 2020, just over 7.9 million was spent on infrastructure, community projects and maintenance. This has been constantly monitored, of course, to ensure that money is spent within the timescale set out within the section 106 agreements. So essentially, we're looking for Cabinet to note the report. I think it's a good thing to move forward on. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, James. That's great. It's fairly straightforward. Does anybody have any comments or queries they want to raise at this point? No, it's an excellent summary. Recommendations at section 2. And once again, I ask you just to confirm your agreement to the recommendations, please. Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. It takes us on to item 12, which is also with James, and James is one speaker, which is Councillor Stone. First of all, hand over to you to highlight some of the key points of the local plan part 2 submission. James.
Thank you, Chair. So as again, we are moving forward with the submission of the local plan part 2. Essentially, as many of you will be aware, we had a second round of consultation. And essentially, this just reflects the changes and amendments made within that. I would like to highlight some of the work done by officers on this, because I think this report and the amendments made really do show how, as a council, we are very much a listening council. And I was really impressed, and I think other members were as well, with some of the amendments and changes that reflected the various stakeholders' concerns. And I think essentially, although we would probably hoping we'd be further along the local plan by now, we actually have a stronger local plan going forward. So essentially, this report sets out the recommendations to full council, and then it will be looked to be submitted to the inspectorate going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Jolly good. Thank you very much, James. So, Councillor Stone, Danielle, over to you.
Thank you. What an absolutely mammoth task this has been, and it's been really frustrating actually, waiting and waiting and waiting for this to be given its big tick, so that all the protections and the promotions that we see in the report come to fruition. But one of the upsides of the long process has been, over time, everything has become crisper and more obvious and better. So, you know, my frustration is balanced really with the knowledge that we have got a really good report here. I think there are some areas where inevitably where I would like a bit more development, but I'm really pleased, for example, that in this plan it's been noted that gypsies and travellers do need temporary sites, and there is the willingness there to meet their needs instead of allowing illegal encampments to go on forever and a day, upsetting our residents and causing us a lot of waste in terms of expenditure. So I'm really pleased to see that. The area of concern for me and for my residents and the people I work with on the Spring Boroughs neighbourhood plan is around heritage. And you'll be aware, I think, that Dr. Marie Dickey has sent in submissions from the Friends of Northampton Castle asking for a much more strategic view on what heritage means. So not just in terms of regeneration of the town centre, but much more strategically in terms of what is it our town has got to offer its residents and what is it our town has got to offer visitors coming in. And I think the heritage sites all around the castle mound and around the station are absolutely, you know, the heart and the soul of Northampton. And one of the things that the Forum and FONC want to see is how that can be looked at much more holistically, so that you can see it from different vantage points when you're in that particular area, and then see how that's going to join up through the town to Delapre, to the Eleanor Cross, so that we have something really significant to offer tourists and residents alike. So that would be my only criticism of the plan. I would like much more of a focus on heritage and on the Heritage Gateway, looking at it holistically from that point of view, rather than just in terms of town centre regeneration. Of course, that's important, and those heritage sites have got a role to play in that, but actually they have their own integrity, you know, and they relate to that locality and that geography on their own as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And generally, I'd agree. I think that the heritage is something we were keen to progress. We're now seeing that we are moving forward with the acquisition of the Black Line, and of course, on the town's fund bid that Tim mentioned earlier, a little bit more money to top up the fund there for the work with the Churches Conservation Trust is included in that bid. We're hopeful of a good result there. So there is some progress made from what was a low base before. James, did you want to add any comments at all on Danielle's comments? I think we'd probably say fair point.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Councillor Stone, for your comments. I think, you know, we have a very robust report here in terms of the local plan. I think what we can be very confident of going forward, and I'm hopefully certain that the inspector will look at it the same, is that we've ticked all the boxes here. I'm aware that there was a local authority recently who were challenged on their local plan part 2, and actually it wasn't accepted. So you can imagine the sheer amount of officer time and effort that's gone into this, and then to not have it accepted would be absolutely devastating. And I think we can all be very confident that's not going to be the case here. I mean, Councillor Stone makes an excellent point as well regarding development. I think you could always carry on developing a local plan, couldn't you? Really, you could carry on into infinity, because it's one of those jobs that could never really be truly done. But I think we can be confident in terms of what we got here, and I'm really pleased that we are now able to submit it. And my huge thanks to Tito and the team for getting this across the line. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Any further comments or queries on this at all? Phil?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Chair, with all the governments looking at reversing beaching cuts and the ARC looking for a northern rail link across the north of the Oxford-Cambridge Arc, I'm really pleased to see that we're putting in the protection of the disused railway lines within Northampton, and I think that's great news. And I hope that we can take that forward to other areas as well. Just a shame the county council haven't considered it the same.
Thanks, Phil. I'd agree with what you say. Tim, you're going to make a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to pick up on what Danielle said about heritage and the Heritage Gateway in particular. That work is all in hand as far as the Heritage Gateway is concerned. You've touched on the Old Black Lion, and the Borough Council put its money where its mouth is and bought that in order to take that project forward. We also acquired the Castle House site, which was the site of a former empty office building, and the development of that area, including a heritage park, forms part of the town investment plan bid, which has just gone in. So that is all happening. The wider joining together of all the heritage assets is something that really is very much on our radar and would form part of any future policy, particularly on tourism, because as Danielle says, what we've got to do is sell what we've got. And we have heritage right across the board, and making sure that all forms a cohesive whole is very important when we consider Northampton's offer.
Thanks, Tim. Yes, I think we're all in agreement on that. Thank you. Any further comments or questions at all? No, let me add to the thanks to Peter and his team, who seem to have pleased everybody. Congratulations, Peter. It's a great and tremendous piece of work. I'll direct your attention back to the recommendations at section 2. Just ask you to confirm your agreement, please, to the recommendations.
Agreed.
Agreed. Jolly good. Thank you very much. Next item 13, for which we have one speaker, Councillor Stone. This one's with Mike. Mike, this is the carbon neutral Northampton strategy. Over to you.
Yeah, that's right. Do you want to take the speaker first or comments first? Sorry,
if you want to go ahead and highlight anything, Mike, please do, and then we'll bring Councillor Stone in to comment after that.
Okay, cool. Well, 2020 has been an incredibly challenging year for all of us, and even the most ardent of positive thinkers, I think, have struggled to find the positives in such a difficult year. However, one of the positive impacts that I think people recognise is the positive impact that the lockdown had on the environment. Less time spent in traffic, less CO2s from our cars, more walking, more cycling, and in Northampton, record numbers enjoying fresh air and our parks and our open spaces. This report brings much of that together, and how we capitalise on the environmental benefits of the past few months has been a strong consideration. The report for me is an outstanding piece of work, and it really sets down our plan and our commitment to tackling the environmental challenge we face and delivering a carbon neutral Northampton by 2030. Personally, I'd like to thank Peter Bagley for all his hard work as a lead officer in this, but actually there's been lots of contributions from right across the council. And one of the things I really liked about this was the officer climate change group that we had, where any officer, regardless of whether they were involved in this or their work had an impact on the environment, could contribute to the strategy. And this has been mirrored by our climate change forum as well, which has included councillors from all sides and crucially members of the public, which I think has been really important in helping us shape this strategy with their ideas and opinions. In a year where workload at the council has been dominated by the council's response to the pandemic, I'm really truly grateful to everyone that's made this happen and produced this really an outstanding piece of work. It outlines our strategy, our roadmap, and it sets us on course to deliver a carbon neutral Northampton by 2030. Happy to present the report.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much indeed. We all agree with your comments there. Danielle, over to you.
Thank you. And of course, you know, I agree with the comments Councillor Hallam's made, and it was I live on a busy main road. It was really striking during the pandemic how clean the air got, how we could hear the birds singing, how many people were out on cycles. A joy to me to see so many families from a very diverse demographic in Abington Park. I've never seen it so well used. Absolutely brilliant, all of that. And we do need to learn the lessons from all of that. We can live better without the car and without so many cars and with cleaner air, which brings me to this really, really difficult case we've heard about today of the 9-year-old Ella who the coroners have said died with complications caused by air pollution. So I think in the 10 years before we reach our aim, we need to be looking at other mitigations that we can put in place, because we know that working class communities, Black communities, disadvantaged groups are the ones most likely to be living in heavily polluted areas. And in that connection, I'd like to draw your attention to the traveller site in Exton Lane. It's placed in between lots of rocks and lots of hard places near the recycling centre, near the Mixed George waste disposal centre near the A45. And I worry about the health and well-being of the residents in that area. Like I worry about the health and well-being of children near schools. And we've had this discussion before. I think we need to be looking to create zones around schools which are car-free. I think we need to be thinking about areas like the drapery, like school buildings, like the hospital, the maternity unit, because air pollution goes into buildings, and what we don't test is the level of air pollution in buildings. Buildings are permeable and they trap pollution there. So while I welcome this report, and I welcome it for all the reasons Councillor Hallam has outlined, I welcome the partnership of the officers, the community and the members. I do think it's a good plan. I do think we also need to have shorter term mitigations to address some of those very, very serious issues which disproportionately affect the most disadvantaged.
Thank you very much. Was there anything there, Mike, you wanted to comment on?
Not particularly, because individual examples of while pertinent, they're obviously we've looked at lots of individual examples. The one you mentioned was obviously one from London, and not particularly relevant in terms of Northampton, but the wider narrative. I understand where you're coming from, and I guess the importance of this is that this is a 10-year plan effectively, and it's a roadmap, and roadmaps change as you move along them. So I think this will absolutely evolve over the course of time, over the course of getting us to that point. So this isn't like tonight we're saying this is it, that's the document, see you later. It's going to be an ever changing picture. Nobody could have predicted the improvements that we've made in terms of air quality this year. So who knows what's going to happen next? So we'll evolve it as it goes on. But I think the immediate priorities are capitalising on some of those positive things that were drawn out of the pandemic. But I can reassure Councillor Stone that this document is effectively never going to be finished. It will evolve even beyond 2030. Happy to present the report.
Thank you, Mike. It's certainly a priority, and within West Northants there are many others who see this as a major priority in the way that we do, so we can be confident that this impetus will continue. Nevertheless, nice to have got this concluded and be able to fulfil our promise by bringing it back to Council next month as well, which is tremendous. So it's a great piece of work, and we're grateful to all those who have contributed, that wider community that have contributed. Don't see any hands for any further points, so I'll direct your attention back to the recommendations at section 2. Just ask you to confirm your agreement to the recommendations, please.
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Takes us on to item 14, which is with James. We've no more speakers on any of our remaining items, I don't think. So James, over to you to talk us through the Back Road Conservation Area Article 4 direction.
Thank you, Leader. So you may remember in April at our Cabinet meeting, we agreed for the making of a new Article 4 direction to control the development in the Back Road Conservation Area. Obviously, this is essentially a regulation which only lasts for 6 months. So unless we agree it to carry it on further, it would expire. So essentially a very quick and simple one. We're just looking for the approval of the confirmation of the new Article 4 direction. And I hope that members will agree. Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Don't see any hands to signal. Mike, did you want to make a comment there?
No.
Oh, you're agreeing. You're well ahead. Okay, that's great. Yes. Is that full agreement to the recommendations? Can you confirm again?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. Takes us therefore on to item 15, which is with Mike, which is consultation on a variation to the Public Spaces Protection Order, and particularly in the Upton area. I think, Mike, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. This is a really quick one, really, because it's just kick-starting a consultation process to vary the Public Spaces Protection Order, in particular the Phase 2 area of Upton Country Park. This is in response to a number of issues with dogs being off a lead and affecting the sheep. There's lovely sheep that are grazing in that area, but they have been attacked. And one of those incidents was just last week. So it's to actually put some enforcement around that and to ensure that there are some enforcement so dogs are kept on a lead. I have spoken to the farmer whose sheep they are in the last week or so, and also in terms of the consultation, I just add an urge that all of the relevant parish council and the neighbouring parish councils will all be included in that consultation, because lots of people come to that area, and it's not just Upton Parish Council necessarily, it's Upton Meadows and Kisn and Bree as well. So we'll ensure that they're all included in the consultation if it's launched.
That's great. Thank you, Mike. Any comments at all on this?
Needs doing, Chair. Let's crack on with it.
I think it does, given what we understand to be the issues there, it does. So if I can just ask for your confirmation to the recommendations, is that agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Thank you very much. Takes us on to item 16, which in Anna's absence, regrettably Anna couldn't be with us for work commitments this evening, but I'll introduce this. There's no speakers. This is the proposed renewal of Public Spaces Protection Order for the Marble Arch area. They're not indefinite. They have a renewal period, and the renewal period for Marble Arch has come round. I think it was one of, if not the first, Public Spaces Protection Order that we introduced. And many of us will therefore remember the comments and the difficulties that were experienced at that time, prior to it being gated, the antisocial behaviour and the outspoken reaction to that antisocial behaviour. Some really horrible things were going on. Meant that we got a very, very strong support for this to originally instigate it. Obviously, when you then go out to consult to continue it, a significant number of people will say, well, we don't perceive an antisocial behaviour. Great, that's because it's worked. There was a majority who sought to have it renewed, but it wasn't the overwhelming majority that it was before. Nevertheless, it was a majority. And with the extra informed knowledge that we have through our community safety teams and the wider community safety partnership, there's little doubt that it seems to be, to me at least, to be the right thing to continue and to renew this, so that the antisocial behaviour that had otherwise will creep back into that area is kept at bay. And the recommendations at section 2 are asking us to confirm that that's what we seek to do for it to be renewed. Does anybody have any particular queries or comments that they'd like to make on it? Phil, you're going to make a comment?
Just to say, Chair, I agree. And the longer it remains closed and gated, the less significance becomes the problems that were there, and people forget about them. And you know, as you say, when it comes around to renewing, people don't remember what was there and don't recognise the need. I was just thinking, and I've said this before, and I think it's still something we should do. It is highway land. I think we should seek to close it off as highway land, and so it can be used for something else. But otherwise, interest in maintaining the gates might dwindle, and we might not get the public support. And if it was to revert to as it was, then all hell will break loose, and we'll be accused of all sorts. So I just think we still need to pursue the closure of Marble Arch as highway. And I think that's something we should take up with the County Council as soon as we possibly can. I think Marion's onto that anyway.
Marion's nodding. Okay, that's great. Yeah, that's something in hand, Marion. Yeah, terrific. Terrific. Thank you very much. Jolly good. Don't see any further hands for comments or questions. So if I may, I'll just draw your attention back to the recommendations of section 2 and just ask you to confirm your agreement, please.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, at which point, so the next 4 reports are with Stephen. All of them have private information in private appendices. So our proposal is that we would like to take those decisions in public. So as a consequence to which we're going to suspend the public meeting while we consider the confidential, commercially sensitive information, which is done by suspending the live stream and anybody who's not officer or member leaving the meeting. And then we'll reopen the meeting as quickly as we can. And if people are watching on YouTube, if they keep their link open and refresh it, they will find the second half of the meeting then crops up, whether they're watching live or whether they're choosing to watch later. So we'll move into private session.